Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your patience today. We're so glad you're here. We'll just get started as soon as we get people logged on. Thanks again for your patience. Welcome, everyone. All right, it looks like we have a good amount of people. As you're logging on, you'll see our event sponsors and all the people that are represented that put their time into planning this event today. So we really want to give them some real thanks. So take a second to look at that. Okay. All right. And I have the pleasure of introducing our panel, but I also want to give a couple of logistical things too. So welcome. My name's Carrie Sweeney. I'm the director of the UC Berkeley Retirement Center. Organizations from UC Berkeley, UC Davis, and UCSF came together to make today's event happen. And I just showed those sponsors up on the slide. We want to thank them all for their efforts. Today's event will be recorded, and I will record it as soon as we get moving. And a link will be sent to all registrants following the event with a recording. Also, panelists will be able to answer questions. Please use the Q&A feature to share your questions. And I will going to push record. Let's see. Okay. Great. So welcome. I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers today. The session is Aging, Gender, Menopause, AARP Research and Policy Insight. We're bringing together 4 leading experts from AARP's Public Opinion Research Group and Public Policy Institute to explore the factors that shape women's and others' ability to thrive in the workplace at midlife and beyond. Their work examines issues of self-perception, health and well-being, authenticity, and the impact of employer and federal policies. We realize many today have questions regarding medical concerns. So today's session will not address medical or legal issues. I want to welcome Beth Carter, who's the Senior Policy Advisor at AARP Public Policy Institute, who focuses on health issues affecting midlife and older adults. Rebecca Perron, who is the Senior Research Advisor in AARP Research, studies older workers, age discrimination, and Social Security. Senior Research Manager Sarah Kerman, who leads studies that reveal what matters most to older adults at 50 and older across diverse populations. And Jennifer Sauer, Senior Research Advisor in AARP Research, who leads studies that reveal what matters most to who leads a national and state level studies on retirement security, employment, consumer fraud, and economic issues. So thank you. Today, they're going to share their policy insights that illuminate the intersections of aging, gender, and workplace equity, and how these dynamics affect the experience of midlife transitions such as menopause. I'm going to ask to share the slides very quickly. Wonderful. And I'll hand it over to our presenters. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I'll kick us off here today. Thank you all for joining. Looks like we have almost 300 people here today. So thanks for this great turnout. Next slide, please. This is a overall statement of all our presentations together, that combating gendered ageism in society and at work requires authentic representation and better support through menopause. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the moment we're in right now. These are Google searches for the term perimenopause, and the metric ranges from 0 to 100, where 100 is peak popularity for that term. So we are pretty much in peak popularity for Google searches for perimenopause right now. So women are seeking answers. They want knowledge right now. And related to this is that menopause is an $18 billion industry with new products and supplements being introduced to the market all the time, which often aren't approved by the FDA or regulated in any way. So women are seeking answers, they're spending money on products, and I think we really want to make sure women have access to correct information, they know the questions to ask their providers. And again, we're not providing any kind of medical advice here, but we just want to arm you with knowledge and information. Next slide, please. So these are our 4 presentations today. And the first will be Rebecca Perron, who will talk about women and ageism at work. So next slide. I think next slide is just our photos, so we can skip that and move right into Rebecca's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. I also want to say thanks for having us today. Just to give you a little bit of background, I work in AARP research related to issues, as mentioned, around older workers. And so many of the studies I do look at older workers, how they feel about work, experiences that they're going through, and so forth. We do work around how work impacts mental health and vice versa. We do work around how AI is impacting work, for example. But the work that I'm going to focus on today is of 2 studies that we have fielded. One is called the Value of Experience Survey, and this is fielded every 5 years, and it's a very large survey of 40 plus workers, and the workers are those who are working or looking for work. And we look at issues, all sorts of issues related to work. It's a very large breadth and depth in the work, including why people work, characteristics of jobs that older workers are looking for in their jobs, or that they might not take a job unless it has, benefits, caregiving, contingent work, discrimination at work of various kinds, including age discrimination. And so, as I said, it's a very large sample. We also explore the experiences of multicultural populations and LGBTQ plus populations. The other data source that I'll be focusing on today is our Work and Jobs Data Trend Series. So at least annually, we field a small module to workers 50 plus around issues related to age discrimination at large, and then more recently around subtle forms of age discrimination at work. And for both of these data sources, I'll be focused on those who identify as women for this presentation. Next slide, please. So as might be expected, the most important characteristic of why older workers are working is financial. However, we can't ignore that there are other emotional and social reasons for working. So as we see here, 96% say that it's important to their decision to work or be looking for work if they're out of work is to have money. But then you can see 88% say it makes them feel useful, saving for retirement, and then getting pleasure or enjoyment out of work, and having something to do or to stay busy. And when asked about reasons why they've stayed at their jobs, if they've had a longer tenure at their jobs, they say that they're comfortable in their current job. They're more likely to say that than men, and that they enjoy their job. Next slide, please. So as noted, because rationales for working include both the financial and the emotional, women are looking for jobs where their skills will be utilized. So when they're asked about job characteristics and the characteristics that a job must have before they'll accept it, the opportunity to use their skills or talents at 89%, a job with stability, competitive pay, paid time off, and healthcare benefits or insurance. But also 88% want to learn something new. And that's more commonly answered as something that they're looking for than for men. And a majority of women also see their job as part of who they are. So it's not just about money, right? That theme continues. And almost all women, 92%, say they seek their employment that will have meaning to them. Next slide, please. So workplace flexibility, not surprisingly, is a key driver for women. Some of the characteristics you'll see here, not surprisingly, ability to work from home, either part-time or full-time, flexibility, an easier commute, and part-time work becomes, with age, as age increases, so does the interest in part-time work. And when we fielded this value of experience survey, the cadence that it fell on was in 2022. The data was collected. So we were sort of still in the midst of COVID and coming out of COVID, and what is that going to look like? We also ask questions around, as a result of COVID, have you sort of looked anew at what your priorities are? And we see that women say that they have. So they're pausing, they're making a conscious effort to spend more time on personal goals, take time to relax, reprioritizing where work fits within their entire life, and then exploring ways to help reduce work stress. And interestingly, over 1 in 3 women, as I said, it was, coming out of COVID. So it's unsurprising that a good amount of women, 35%, say that they felt stressed out or burnt out between work and home. And as we start to look at some of these topics related to what women are looking for in work, presentation just disappeared for me.
It'll come back.
My apologies. I'm having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to pull it back where we're at. So sorry. It's coming back.
I'm happy to continue on. Another thing that we found out as we explored caregiving and work is that nearly half, 49%, say that they've had a workplace disruption or workforce disruption related to caregiving for someone else, for another adult, family member or friend. So these include things like all the way up to leaving a job, but also, needing to use their sick or vacation hours, needing to change their work hours, needing to find a job that has different types of flexibility in it because of those caregiving responsibilities. And we know that those fall are more likely to fall to women than to men. Next slide, please. This would be slide 11. So what we see too is, as we get to workplace culture characteristics, they loom very large for women in the workplace, women workers. 96% are that matter the most to women. So having a boss that treats you with respect, having co-workers who treat you with respect, a friendly work environment, a workplace that holds people accountable for their actions. These are all over 9 in 10 who say that that's what they're looking for in a job. They want respect, inclusion, and acceptance of who they are and what they bring to the job and the workplace culture. So also 9 in 10 women say that they're looking for, like I said, a workplace that respects and encourages them, has work that's meaningful, is free from discrimination based on all characteristics. So gender, sexual orientation, disability status, veteran status, age, race, ethnicity. So they're looking for, this all relates, this positive culture as they work. It's not just about finding a job, it's about finding the right job. So 3 and 4 also want a workplace that understands and supports women's specific health needs. So that's why we're talking today, but also has a through line to that caregiving component. So the need for that flexibility, for example. Next slide. So here's where we move to that work and jobs module that I was referring to previously. This now includes workers ages 50 and older, and the previous work was 40 and older. So for many years now, 20 plus years, we've been asking questions around age discrimination in the workplace. And we can see here that as of the 2024 fielding, that over 2 in 3 women say that they have seen or experienced age discrimination in the workplace today, higher than for men. Next slide, please. And of those who have seen or experienced age discrimination at work, nearly all, 91%, say that it's very or somewhat common that it happens. We also, in this work and jobs module, as I said, we started to focus on subtle forms of age discrimination. There are those forms of age discrimination that seem to be universally recognized as age discrimination, not getting a job, making an overt statement around age, but we're now starting to ask around more subtle forms of age discrimination. Who gets called on at work meetings, whether everyone is invited to, for example, social gatherings and so forth. So of those who think that subtle forms of age discrimination, they've seen or experienced those, a similar number, 92%, say that subtle forms of age discrimination are common. Next slide, please. And so as I mentioned, some of these subtle forms of age discrimination, we can see them here in these tiles. 66% have experienced a situation at work where someone assumes that they're less tech savvy because they're 50 plus. Assuming that older employees are resistant to change, 26%. Not acknowledging older employees' accomplishments or expertise, making jokes about different generations, giving preference to younger employees for training, and making jokes about a colleague's age. Next slide. So in fact, 22% feel pushed out of their job because of their age, either all the time or some of the time. And when we look at women in this, with this question, we see it jump from 18% for women workers who are 50 to 64, all the way up to 43% once we're looking at the slice of the population that is 65 plus in the workforce. So obviously a very large jump. And we see sort of that as age increases, as does that experience with age discrimination in the workplace. And as we look at all of this data together, obviously, as we recognize, discrimination of any kind is not conducive to a positive workplace culture. And so that has implications for the labor force, generally speaking. And then when we ask them, so you've seen or experienced subtle forms of age discrimination. Where does this happen? Is this happening, like I said, is it happening just in the job search? Well, the answer is no. So it does happen, they do notice this during the job search, but also in meetings, at social events, in one-on-one situations, and with senior leadership. So it's a pervasive situation whereby I think, you know, as we talk to people, some just think of it as a job application issue, but it's an issue not only in job application, but in the job itself, throughout the day. And then of course that relates to job, retaining a job, and then how able you are to move up within an organization, access to training and those types of things. So really, it really can be a very large hurdle to overcome for women in the workplace. Next slide. And now I'll throw it over to Beth.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm not sure if we wanted to pause for questions or just do questions at the end. Either way is fine with me.
There haven't been any. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
There.
Thanks, Beth.
Sure. I can charge ahead. Just a quick note about terminology before I start. I refer to women throughout my presentation, and I want to recognize that transgender individuals may also experience menopause. Menopause in transgender and gender diverse populations is poorly understood and very understudied. Trans men may undergo menopause after oophorectomy or hysterectomy, which is removal of the ovaries or uterus, or changes in gender-affirming hormone therapy. And trans women on gender-affirming hormone therapy may also experience hormone fluctuations. So I just want to recognize those populations as well. Next slide, please. So, I'm going to present a study I did on menopause treatments, menopause, seeking treatment for menopause symptoms through the US healthcare system. But first, I just kind of want to give a background on the epidemiology of menopause globally and in the US. So we know that there are about 4 billion women in the world right now who are either postmenopausal or perimenopausal, about 170 million in the US. In the US, about 1.5 to 2 million women enter menopause annually. And the longer women live, the more time they're spending in this postmenopausal period. So it could be up to 40% of their lives or 30 or more years. And something I find very interesting is the average age of menopause differs drastically across countries, with the highest in Norway of almost 53 years and the lowest in Taiwan of almost 45 years. And these differences are very poorly understood. So a lot more research needs to be conducted on that. Next slide, please. This slide just gives kind of some definitions for terms I'll be using. Perimenopause is the time between the fertile years and menopause, where women often experience a range of symptoms. Menopause is defined as one point in time, 12 months after the last menstrual period. So a woman who's in perimenopause, who maybe goes 6 months without a menstrual period and then gets a period again, you have to reset that clock. So it's once 12 months after the last menstrual period. And then the postmenopausal time is after menopause is complete, but symptoms may go on. So symptoms can start appearing in perimenopause and go through postmenopause. Another thing I want to point out is the perimenopausal period is really defined by these fluctuations in estrogen progesterone, and it looks very similar to the years spent in puberty. So hormones are all over the place. There's no tests that over-the-counter tests that test your estrogen will just give you your estrogen at that point in time, where it's fluctuating by the hour and by the day, and that can explain why some women are experience hot flashes some days and other days feel fine. And obviously during these fertile years, estrogen and progesterone are varying on a cyclical manner with the menstrual cycle every 28 to 31 days or so, and also pregnancies in there would also affect the hormone levels. So that's just kind of an overview on the terms I'll be using, and I'll move on to the next slide, please. Most women in menopause experience symptoms, up to 90%, so there's a lucky 10% that doesn't seem to experience any symptoms, and they appear in all parts of the body because we have estrogen receptors in all parts of our body. The vasomotor symptoms are the ones most commonly talked about. Those are the hot flashes, night sweats, migraines. There's also the genitourinary syndrome. That's a set of symptoms related to the vagina, often thinning of the mucosal walls, vaginal dryness, which can lead to burning and irritation, and sometimes infections, frequent urination. And then the psychogenic symptoms are often anger, irritability, anxiety, depression, loss of concentration, and brain fog. I've heard some women say the first indication that they were in perimenopause was they were just consumed by rage. So the symptoms just vary widely. And the point is that if you notice something different, if you're often an anxious person, then you might not, anxiety may not tip you off that you might be experiencing menopause or perimenopause. But if all of a sudden symptoms and anxiety show up, that could be some sort of indication. It's a great idea to keep track of symptoms you may be feeling, and bring those to your healthcare provider to show when and where you experience certain things. Okay, next slide. There's been a historical lack of attention to women's health. Medical training often doesn't include women's health issues and menopause. Research funding is often much lower for women's health issues than other health issues. Research on women's health issues is underfunded, and the effect of biological sex on conditions affecting both sexes is often underexplored. And medical education and clinical training on women's health in the U.S. is often considered inadequate. Next, please. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to be talking about hormone replacement therapy, and in no way am I advocating that women get on HRT. I'm presenting it as kind of a case study in how women are often mistreated with the healthcare system. Could we go back there? Yeah. And also, hormone replacement therapy makes it sound like it's one thing, but it's actually a collection of any type of hormone treatment that women may access during perimenopause or postmenopause. Some women take estrogen plus progesterone. Some women might take one or the other. There's varying doses. There's varying routes of administration, from pills to creams. So hormone replacement therapy, it's really therapies. It's a collection of any kind of hormone related treatment. But I'll just refer to it as HRT. HRT was first was first approved by the FDA in 1942 and became widely adopted in the 1960s, the late 1960s in the US. And that is primarily attributed to the publication of a book called Feminine Forever, which was written by Robert Wilson in 1966, a gynecologist in the US. After Dr. Wilson's death, it was revealed that he received funding from the pharmaceutical company that sold Perron, which was one of the hormone replacement therapies. So it was revealed that Wyeth had funded the publication of this book, but in nowhere in the book was that revealed. If you all haven't read Feminine Forever, I suggest you try to find it. It's just misogynistic. I don't know how else to describe it, but presented in a way that's where it's helping women. The premise is that estrogen can make all women younger and sexier and easier to live with for their partners. So it's really almost in service to men that women should be taking estrogen is part of the argument. But after its publication, HRT use really skyrocketed in the US. And that went on until 2002, when a study from the Women's Health Initiative was published, basically saying that HRT was evil and would cause heart disease, and it raised cancer risks, and that the risks outweighed the benefits, and that women should stop taking it immediately. There was huge public alarm. The headlines from major news outlets across the country were just, saying this study proves, HRT is dangerous. And by the way, no single study ever proves anything. Science is just a collection of added knowledge. So the public alarm was just it just went way past kind of what was warranted. And then later in 2017 and early in 2020s, the authors kind of reran the analyses and kind of withdrew the conclusions that they had reached. But by then the trouble had already, or the effects had already been, well, as you'll see in the next slide, the prescriptions of HRT was plummeted drastically. So if you can move to the next slide. So you'll see in 2002, I should have said. In 2001, there were 112 million prescriptions for HRT products in the US. And then in 2002, that study was published. The press went crazy, and it's plummeted down to 2008. It was like a third or a fourth of where it had been only 7 years earlier. And I heard stories of women who just were on it one day and then were unable to access their prescriptions the next day. Doctors just were too scared to prescribe it. And if you can go to the next slide, you can see what's happened since 2008. These are prevalence of women in postmenopausal women who are taking HRT. So it's not in the millions as in the previous slide. You'll see again this same drop that happened. And then post 2008, you can see it kind of levels off. It maybe even decreases even more through 2020. And I don't know any data from 2020 to present that shows what's happening if there's if it's moving up at all with this new interest in menopause and perimenopause. Next slide, please. So now I'll just briefly, in the next 3 slides, describe a study I conducted last year using data from the Medical Expenditure Panel Survey. Given that between 1.5 to 2 million women enter menopause annually, and that symptoms can last up to 10 years for certain populations, in any given year, there can be 8 to 10 to 12 million experiencing menopausal symptoms. And despite the millions of women who could benefit from treatment, a lack of understanding of menopause, combined with these recent controversies around HRT, may deter women from seeking care. Next slide, please. So I used the MEPS data to see in 2021 how many women sought care for their menopausal symptoms. And I found that among women ages 45 to 64, 2 million had sought treatment for menopause, which is about, depending on how many, 10 million is a conservative estimate that of the number of women experiencing symptoms in any given year. That's about 20% of women experiencing symptoms are actually seeking care from their physician. And that begs the question, if they're not, going to their physician, where are they trying to get care? Are they using supplements? Are they using alternative medical providers? What are women doing to help relieve their symptoms? And I just want to say that aside from HRT, there are two other non-hormonal treatments that have been approved by the FDA. One is Brisdel, or paroxetine, that was approved in 2003, and that's an SSRI, which is just like Prozac and Paxil, so it's a antidepressant. I heard when we gave this presentation at ASA, one woman said, I went to my doctor to help find treatment for my menopause symptoms, and I was just prescribed an antidepressant. Well, it's possible that it was Brisdel, which is approved by the FDA to help relieve menopause symptoms. And then in 2023, Vezoa was approved by the FDA to also help reduce hot flashes. And I've actually seen ads for that recently on TV. So when women are seeking treatment, what they're getting, 2/3 are getting HRT, about 17% received an SSRI, and then 18% received some other sort of treatment from their physician. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, just to show that the access to treatments for menopause symptoms varies by race and ethnicity, by education level, by family income, and by type of insurance. So white women were twice as likely as non-Hispanic, Black, or Hispanic women to seek treatment for their menopause symptoms. If a woman has more than a college education, a higher income, or has health insurance through their employer, they're also more likely to seek treatment. So the reasons behind this are unknown, but there's certainly racial and ethnic groups who are mistrustful of the US healthcare system. That could be part of it. And so we need to make sure that all women are able to access treatments that work for them. That concludes my slides. I believe Sarah's next.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you everyone for your interest today. My name is Sarah Kerman. I was the lead researcher on AARP's Mirror survey. So Mirror is a series of surveys launched in 2018 exploring women's perspectives on aging, beauty, and media representation, really focusing on this intersection of age and gender within the broader societal and cultural context. So our aim through highlighting women's perspectives through Mirror is really to shine light on women's call for age-inclusive representation. I also want to note, for the purposes of the Mirror survey, which centers on gender, we interviewed respondents who self-identify as women. For brevity, I'll use the term women moving forward. So we fielded this Mirror survey 6 times since its inception, each time having a slight variation on the theme. In our latest Mirror survey, which I'll talk about today, we had a central broader theme around the concepts of authenticity and representation, which has always really been the core of our Mirror survey. And as we were in the design phases of this study, we realized we also wanted to explore this idea of the relationship between the different phases of menopause and self-perception. So that's those are the areas that I will be focusing on today. So overall, in my remarks today, I'll kind of convey this key idea that women are embracing their value through menopause, but they lack the accurate portrayals and societal support. I don't think this is necessarily a surprise to anyone on the call, but I would like to open up my remarks with a quote from a woman in our focus group that we held leading up to fielding our quantitative mirror survey. And she says, "The older I've gotten, I think I'm just happier with myself. I'm like, okay, I'm at a good point. I'm comfortable. Everything seems to be going well financially or at home with the kids and everything. So the older I get, I don't really care what anyone else thinks. I feel sexy, I feel comfortable, and I feel confident." So I share this woman's words because they're demonstrative of a narrative that is not often told, although we're starting to see people see a shift in people talking in these terms. But and that narrative is, with age, our data shows very consistently that women feel increasingly comfortable and confident in themselves. Next slide, please. So we surveyed over 4,400 women, including samples of over 1,000 Asian American and Pacific Islander, Black and African American, and Latino women, and found a clear trend. So, as I alluded to earlier, that as women get older, they're more likely to say they've grown into their authentic selves. And in fact, 9 in 10 women attribute this growth to accumulated wisdom and accumulated lived experiences. Importantly, women's journeys do present differently by race and ethnicity. Black women, for example, are the most likely to say they've grown into their authentic selves, and this is driven by younger Black women. So while we do still see an upward trajectory with age, it's less drastic for Black women because they're starting from a place of greater confidence. And I'd also like to note one of the reasons I was excited to bring this research to a university setting, which I haven't done yet, is because it's really a space where many young women are navigating their identity and their self-expression and societal expectations, often independently for the first time. And at the same time, it's a space where that's uniquely positioned to foster this sort of intergenerational dialogue and exchange, where women of all ages can learn from one another and start to kind of challenge and reshape the cultural norms, particularly around aging and womanhood. While this question wasn't specifically about menopause, it's representative of a journey that coincides with women who are transitioning through the various phases of menopause. So I think it's important to discuss in the context of menopause, because while women are navigating these biological changes, they're also doing so within the broader social environment, and that context helps shape how their experiences are perceived and supported and valued. Next slide. Speaking of which, while we see this kind of powerful story of increasing authenticity with age, media representations have not kept pace. So the slide looks very light to me. I'm not sure why that is, but about 2/3 of women 50 and older say they rarely or never see themselves in media or advertising. So that's the disconnect. So when women don't see themselves represented authentically, it reinforces these stereotypes and also the silence. So now it is worth noting that over half of women see representations of women 50 and older getting better. So I think it's important to acknowledge that progress. And I think we've all seen evidence of that. Again, this question wasn't about representation. It wasn't specifically about menopause, but I do want to acknowledge that for the first time, Beth alluded to this cultural movement at the beginning of the call. I'm starting to see commercials that reflect this specific experience, for example. So talking about representation matters in the context of menopause because it helps us move from this place of stigma to support. And so that's kind of the movement I think we're witnessing right now. So next slide, please. So moving into the questions on the survey that asked specifically about menopause, we asked women what was the impact of being in their current phase of menopause on their sense of self. And we see that in perimenopause, or that menopausal transition, that's generally more disruptive. So this is a time when women are experiencing changes and symptoms that can impact work and family life. And while those symptoms range in intensity, it can be very challenging symptomatically for many women, and also very confusing, especially due to this lack of support and dialogue around this phase, although we're starting to see a change in the right direction. So, but, we'll hear women in our focus group say things like, I just don't feel like me, and they just don't know where to turn. We see Asian American women are especially likely to say that being in perimenopause has a negative impact on their sense of self, which could be related in part to Asian American women saying they're less knowledgeable about menopause, which we'll see later. Now, women become more likely to report a positive impact or no impact on sense of self in postmenopause, which I think is a very important story. So, we hear women feel free from having to worry about their period, and while symptoms continue for many, they may ease or cease. And B, recall this is a time coinciding with women having the benefit of accumulated lived experience and learnings, and also being able to distance themselves from external expectations and becoming more self-assured. Next slide, please. So we also asked women about the impact of being in their current phase of menopause on how society values them. And women are really split on this one between saying it has a mixed impact, a negative impact, or no impact. We see that Black women over-index on saying no impact in perimenopause. Again, we spoke with cultural consultants in interpreting these findings, and one of the theories as to why this could be is that there's a heavy sense of undervaluation by society in general, and hence for Black women in terms of perceptions of societal value, menopause may have less of a significant impact. And again, we see women in postmenopause are especially likely to say no impact. However, I do want to point out that women are more likely to say being in postmenopause has a negative impact on societal value than on their sense of self. So in the charts on the right, the donut charts, 23% say being in postmenopause has a negative impact on their societal value versus only 10% saying it has a negative impact on sense of self. So there's a real misalignment here between societal and personal perceptions of women in postmenopause. Next slide. We also see women in the menopausal transition, perimenopause phase, being more likely to be concerned about being treated differently or stereotyped because of menopause and its symptoms, with 1 in 5, for example, being concerned about different treatment at work. So this could be for a variety of reasons. One, it could be symptomatically very challenging at the time. It could also be an indication of the cultural shift we're seeing right now. Could go to the next slide. Okay. So we know menopause is a confusing time for many women, and here's one indicator as to why. Almost half of women prior to entering the menopausal transition say they lack knowledge about menopause. This is especially true for Asian American and Pacific Islander women. And speaking with cultural consultants, one of the theories behind this included this could be a result or response to it having been traditionally respected to handle burdens more internally. And we see in the chart on the right, women either before or during the menopausal transition are especially likely to say that menopause needs more attention. Go to the next slide. So as women kind of recognize that they're lacking knowledge about menopause, they recognize the larger systemic issues at play, kind of creating that, and they're calling for more menopause education, more study on the health of older women, more doctors who specialize in menopause. The charts here show the percent of women who agree with each of those sentiments. We do know that doctors get very little training on menopause, and that, as we heard from Beth, it's very much understudied. So that's underpinning a lot of the sentiment we're seeing here, and also the sentiment you may be feeling yourselves. In addition, agreement with these statements is especially pronounced for women before or during the menopausal transition. And it's also particularly true for Asian American and Pacific Islander women. Next slide. Women yet to enter the menopausal transition are also especially likely to agree that U.S. policymakers need to ensure all women can access high-quality care, including access to HRT, and employers should provide more support. Again, we see this as especially true for Asian American and Pacific Islander women, and Latinas before the menopausal transition are also especially likely to be looking for workplace support. Next slide, please. So this brings me to my final point. So, there is a powerful opportunity here to continue answering women's call for more inclusive societal and media portrayals and to expand comprehensive menopause support. So you all are already leading the way and spearheading these conversations as part of your workplace initiatives. So I hope today's insights really reinforce and energize your efforts. So you can explore the full study at aarp.org/mirror. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jen, who really spearheaded AARP's menopause public opinion research a couple of years ago. So with gratitude, I'll hand it over to Jen.
Thank you, Sarah. Just a quick question for the host. Are we okay on time if we go over a little bit, or?
We're scheduled till quarter after. So.
Oh, okay, good. All right. I was going to cut out some slides, but it looks like I have time for them all. So hello, everybody. I'm Jennifer Sauer and Senior Research Advisor with AARP's Research Group and Public Policy Institute, PRI. And I'm going to share some findings from a study we published last year that explored the economic impact of menopause. We surveyed females ages 35 and older, and we also surveyed employers, and we also did focus groups with women. And I am going to use women and females interchangeably, also along with workers, because of the same reasons as my colleagues. We've tried to be as inclusive as possible. And my focus groups and my surveys did actually include a small portion, but it seems to be a little bit of a rise in respondents from the LGBTQ community. So I was pleased with that, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to do any subgroup analysis. So looking forward to future research. So the objectives of this quantitative and qualitative study were to learn how menopause is, if at all, impacting female workers on the job. What is it costing them and or their employers in productivity, physical absence, and discomfort? How are they managing their symptoms and at what financial expense? And what do they want or need in terms of support for managing those symptoms in the workplace? And to better understand the issue overall, like I said, we felt the need to survey employers as well. So for today's presentation, I'm going to share some of the data that aligns with my colleagues' studies and hopefully shows the intersection where menopause meets economic and workforce issues. Oh, I'm sorry, you can change the slide. Thank you. Meets economic and workforce issues due to societal stigma, corporate culture, and ageism and age discrimination. But before I get into the research, let's quickly consider some context to help frame your thinking. So first, to expand on Beth's population statistics, female workers overall represent nearly half the labor force in the United States. And as workers, they contribute significantly to the nation's GDP each year. One estimate, although it's a little bit older, I think around 2017, 2018, but it should give you a good sense of where we are, figured that over $7 trillion annually and roughly $21 billion a day is what the female workforce contributes to our GDP. About 50 million women, 53%-ish in the United States labor force are age 35 and older. And as Beth alluded to, most of them are likely entering perimenopause or in menopause. Given that menopause can last well over a decade, these years are key job and career growth years, and for many women, as they may seek management or leadership roles in their organization or industry. And as we heard from Rebecca, most women in this age period want to work and enjoy working. However, too many female workers, particularly those in midlife, can be held back or unable to move forward or continue in the job if they don't feel supported or respected by fellow workers, managers, or the organization at large for their talent and skills due to false perceptions of aging and natural life transitions like menopause. Women notice the social and media bias, as we learned from Sarah, and they also notice the organizational bias toward female workers. They see the misunderstandings of menopause symptoms on their colleagues' faces, and they feel a stigma when symptoms unexpectedly occur on the job, at social gatherings, or with their loved ones. Sometimes they can laugh it off, let it roll off their shoulder. Other times it's just too uncomfortable or embarrassing. Next slide. And indeed, our study found that quite a few women, nearly 4 in 10, entering menopause, believe that believe that society has a negative view of this transition, while just 5% would say society views it positively. Our focus group participants add a little bit more support to this data, particularly this quote at the top, where she says, I mean, you already get the jokes, you know, people are like, she's in menopause, that's why she's like that, or things like that. And down here, another told us, you know, menopause makes me think of aging, and it's also makes me think of the stigma that is around aging. Next slide. And when asked about the impact on their own lives, while a good number report no impact, half say menopause has a negative impact on their day-to-day life. And among those women who are working during menopause, 4 in 10 say it has a negative impact on their work life. Next slide. So not surprisingly, very few female workers would describe their organization's culture around menopause as comfortable. And a plurality say menopause is not discussed at all, particularly among workers with a male direct manager. And again, our focus groups provide some elaboration on this, and I won't read them all. You can take a look over here. But and interestingly, while employers are more likely than female workers to say their company culture is comfortable or accommodating with regards to menopause, significantly more women than employers say the topic is not discussed in the workplace. Next slide.
Am I on the right side? I need to go back.
You know what? I think, I'm sorry. I know I might have skipped. Let's see. Go to the next one. And this might be the slide we're on here. I have 43. Is that what you've got?
I can't see the slide number.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 43.
Okay, is this right? Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
Let me just keep moving and
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see here. So in fact, a third say they don't bring up, yep, this is it. Say they don't bring up their symptoms to their direct manager because they report it's a private matter, and almost just as many don't think it's necessary. Related, just over 1 in 10 say they don't think their employer would be understanding. And at this point, I liked what one of the focus group ladies had to say. She said, I think if I were to talk to men about these issues, it would be like admitting that I'm becoming a lesser person. So I'd rather talk about having a sleepless night or for some other reason, like, oh man, I'm so tired. I'd rather make something up to kind of explain why I'm not at my best that day than attribute it to menopause. Next slide. Yeah, there we go. And so some female workers report using sick days for their menopause symptoms, as well as vacation leave and employer personal leave. Some have even used disability leave. Among the top symptoms to use leave for are the more emotional symptoms, as well as the physiological symptoms like hot flashes or sweating. Next slide. Okay, and actually you can just move to the next one. But women in our study appear to power through the workday despite their discomfort. While a third have missed work due to their menopause symptoms, most have taken up to just 5 days over a 12-month period, with over half missing no days of work over 12 months to manage menopause symptoms. But as we can see, as the number of reported symptoms increases, the likelihood of missed days also increases. This is something employers and labor economists need to take note of. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Mayo Clinic study that was out, I think, it might even be almost 2 years now. But they showed that worker productivity losses due to untreated menopausal symptoms are estimated to be about $1.8 billion. And the related healthcare costs are estimated to be over $24 billion. Next slide. For female workers with 10 or more symptoms, about 1 in 10 left a job or considered leaving a job due to their menopause symptoms. This is also important to note, given that most employers are challenged to retain qualified workers, despite nearly all saying it is a high priority to do so. Not only can recruiting processes take up to 12 weeks, the cost to replace an employee can be 3 to 4 times the position's salary. And you can, I can forward that citation to anybody that's interested from SHRM. Next slide. And perhaps this explains the employer data on this slide a little bit. While both female workers and employers agree that U.S. employers should do more to support women in menopause, significantly more employers than female workers felt this way. Next slide. And when asked to specifically consider the types of employer benefits they would like to see, HRT and access to menopause healthcare professionals top the list. And a little over 2/3 would like a benefit for alternative ways to treat menopause symptoms. But almost 2/3 would like to see information or guides on menopause for workers and managers, and close to half would like menopause awareness sessions. Next slide. So finally, 2/3 of women 35 plus and 3/4 of employers agree that U.S. policymakers should work to ensure all women can access personalized menopause treatment, including hormone replacement therapy. Next slide. So some key conclusions that we reached in our study. The stigma around menopause, older persons, and older workers in general needs to be eliminated. But duh, right? It's easier than it sounds. As we've learned here this morning, the stigma around menopause can lead to misunderstandings and biases that could exacerbate age discrimination, thus making it more difficult for women to move ahead or even stay in their careers or jobs. But how can we do that? First, we think it needs to be top of mind thought and focus among employers, workers, and women who need to be their own advocate and policymakers. And how do we make that happen? Our results point to information being a critical component for change. Our research and that of other experts in this area see employers as an important step in reducing age and menopause bias in the workplace, providing information and resources to both managers and workers in the form of actual manuals, guidebooks, pamphlets, sessions with HR experts from known expert organizations that focus on menopause. 68% of the employers in our study say that they would find information on menopause and symptoms useful. Also, employers could implement in-house training for managers and all workers on how to best communicate about workplace needs and available support. Supporting female workers and providing a safe cultural environment for expressing needs will only work to a company's advantage in terms of maintaining productivity, job satisfaction, retention, and improved recruitment efforts. Third, no one can help you if they don't know what's bothering you, right? Not as easy as it sounds. I guess I skipped ahead earlier. But how do we overcome this feeling of this being too personal or private, or perceiving others as not understanding? While it is a very personal and unique life transition, it's also a very normal one, no different than childbirth or menstruation. And because women spoke up before, there are safeguards and accommodations in place to protect female workers' jobs and provide the necessary in-house support they need to stay on the job as they want. Our research showed that 86% of female workers have never discussed menopause or their symptoms with their managers, and most say because they feel it's private, not necessary to mention, or they don't think their manager would understand. And yet 97% say they have never gone to HR to recommend an employee benefit or program that could support them in menopause. So as for employers, the data show that 2 top reasons they give for not providing menopause-specific benefits or support is because they say Female workers never ask for them, and in their view, they don't see them suffering. Interestingly, a Harvard Business School study found that normalizing open discussion of menopause actually reduced bias in one of their studies in a workplace setting and reduced the sense of a stigmatized topic for women in general. Finally, and as you saw from my study and Sarah's, female workers and employers agree that U.S. policymakers can make a difference. It might be truly challenging in the current political climate, but there are many policymakers who feel strongly about advancing health research in this area and encouraging medical professionals and schools to educate medical students and other health professionals on treating women in midlife. And that's it for me.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. This was, I'm gonna stop the share right now. And just want to say thank you so much. This is so packed with information, and thank you to Laura, who's been helping out with the Q&A. I have a couple of questions here that I think we can take live. We have a couple minutes, so thank you for that. So there's a question about educating doctors. So, for example, if let's see here, there it is. If you can see that question, let's see. Okay, so what is being done to educate doctors on perimenopause or postmenopause? I was seen by 5 different doctors for my perimenopause symptoms, and none of them suggested that it could be due to perimenopause, even though I was 50 years old. Does anyone want to take that?
I have some information. I don't know, Beth, I saw you nodding. Did you want to jump in? Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay, so there is some effort being advocated for medical students and doctors to learn more about menopause. One big organization that has a conference every year that draws thousands of doctors is the Menopause Society Conference, and that is their mission, is to educate doctors, continue looking at the research and researching the research that's been done on menopause and hormone replacement therapy and other treatments for managing symptoms. There's also a House bill, and I think, Beth, you might even know the status of it, but part of that bill is to put in place education in medical schools, and I don't know if it includes physicians, but medical schools, to make sure that their curriculum includes a section on menopause. So it's moving, but a little slower than we'd like. I don't know, Beth, do you have an update on that bill? I think it's
well, most bills in Congress related to women's health have stalled and are not moving forward at this time. But
okay.
there are several bills that call for more education in U.S. medical schools and other and nursing schools as well, and other providers like physician's assistants, and more funding for women's health research.
And Kate's going to take on the next question. I just want to add that it's important to discuss specific situations with your physician. And if this physician's not responsive, they can consult someone virtually, like from the UCLA Menopause Center or some of the other groups that you mentioned in this session. Kate, we have another question in the hopper. Thank you, guys.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to find where you're at in the questions.
Okay, I can, there's a question about talking about this in the workplace. So can you say more about menopause and why we would need to discuss it in the workplace? I think it does bring, I think, a good conversation. I feel like it's inappropriate to talk about this with a manager, especially men. I like wellness groups that have forums and an outlet to discuss and find understanding community. The only scenario I can see is if your manager was going through menopause, but that would only be if my manager's open to it. So what are your thoughts there? You want to take that?
I can. I mean, I don't know. I just wanted to make sure Beth or Sarah or Rebecca, any?
Go ahead,
Okay.
Jen.
So your sentiment is shared by many. And so it is a fine line. And I think we're coming at it from a standpoint of raising awareness, certainly not forcing anybody into a conversation or feeling that, oh, if I'm suffering today from extreme symptoms, I need to go tell my manager I'm suffering from menopause symptoms and I need to go home. Certainly, as I read that one quote from our focus group, the woman felt that she just has to make, she'd rather make something up, or she felt she had to make something up because her managers wouldn't understand. And even myself, I don't want to say I'm having a lot of sweating going on today or brain fog, I need to go home, although I have a very understanding manager. But I think we're trying to put a lot of effort into raising awareness among other employers, that the women in their 50 or midlife women, their workers are, they're still good workers. They're still putting in 110%, but there are going to be days when they may feel like they're falling short. And so it's more about raising awareness among managers that, this could be going on. Maybe they do have the flu, but at least be sensitive about what is going on with them. And also that, that organizations have, once they have that understanding of, this transition in life, that, maybe it's incorporated into their HR policy. Maybe it's something that they've got maybe a person in HR that women can come talk to specifically and say, here's what's happening to me. What do you recommend? What types of leave would be good for me? And how should I talk to my manager? Blah, blah, blah. But, so I get you, whoever this question is from, it's like, who wants to go, when you were younger, who wanted to go to their manager and say, oh, I'm having a heavy period today? You don't. But on the other hand, we now have, because of the voices that were raised and because of the awareness raised in companies and corporations and organizations, we do have support in ladies' rooms and the things that we need. And it's not really talked about anymore. It's just normal now. So that's kind of where we're going with that.
Super helpful. I think talking about things and creating some transparency is one of the first steps we can take to combat some of these things like ageism and other
Right.
situations.
That too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting close to wrapping up. Unless there's a question, I see Beth, you might help out answer the question about the book. That's great. And Kate, if there's any other questions like non-medical ones that are coming up, we can do that. And we've also shared the Feminine Forever book there. So I just want to say thank you to Beth, Rebecca, Sarah, and Jennifer for sharing your time and expertise today. Also to the participants, you'll receive a link to a survey. Please complete this to let us know how we did. We're a volunteer group and mighty and strong. So please let us know. And you'll receive an email in a couple of weeks with a link to the recording as well. So that'll include the slides, so you can reference those slides. Thank you again to the gracious committee for their time in planning the event and to the participants for attending today. It's a really important topic. And once again, to my friends from AARP for being so adaptable and informative. We're glad to create this connection. There's a lot of effort to educate the UC campuses about menopause. And so this is just a great resource that we can add to that and increase the conversation about this. So thank you again for your time. And people are giving you all sorts of kudos in the chat if you can see them. We really
Great. Thank you so much for having us. We really enjoyed
Thank
this.
you. This
yeah,
was
we
great.
appreciate it. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for the
Thanks.
invitation.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. Thanks for saying yes. Take care, everyone. Okay.
All right,
All
take care.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.